Welcome to the third session of FE Voices, and today we have Ellisha Soanes from West Suffolk College, who will be talking about how they led on a student project which embedded Black history in their curriculum all year round. And we've also got Jeff Greenidge, who's the Director of Diversity from the AoC, who will be our wing person in terms of discussions around the challenges in the broader sense within the sector, but also in terms of the experience that he's had talking to a range of different colleges in further education and what they might be doing and the challenges that we have in front of us. Before we start, I just want to share with you a video which West Suffolk College and Ellisha put together in terms of just capturing a moment in time when they launched this project last year. After the video, we'll do some proper introductions, and then we'll jump straight into a presentation by Ellisha, who will go through in a little bit more detail in terms of what they did, the impact that it's having, and the reaction that it stirred within the college group as well. We will jump into the video.
I think it is so important for Black history to be part of the all year round curriculum, because it is just important as all the other bits of history.
Black people are part of the UK, and I think growing up we learnt about, you know, the Victorians and world wars and stuff like that, and I used to look at the pictures in the books and be like, so did Black people were they not invented at this point?
We looked at, when we were doing the project, lots of Black inventors, and that is something that me personally, when I've learned about Black history, you never get taught about, because it's a very positive thing that comes from Black history. So I think that would be really good to include more things like that.
I think that it's important that Black children see that they're represented in history at school. We went on to do talks about it in college, just to talk to other students about it, and you could really feel that there was a kind of shift amongst young people.
From the 11th of June, we will be facilitating Black history all year round. I think it's very important that we implement that Black history is a part of British history, and it's important for all students to learn and understand that. So what we will be doing, we'll be focusing on the Windrush generation. We're going to be looking also at our untold heroes, and we'll also be looking at inventors.
In the US singles final at Forest Hills, New York, Louise Brough meets 30-year-old Althea Gibson. A double record, for she was the first at Wimbledon too.
I really hope it will bring a lot of awareness.
To just educate and to understand the struggle and the positivity in Black history, and understand how beautiful the journey's been and still is.
Welcome to both of you, Ellisha and Jeff. If you want to do a quick introduction about who you are and what you do, and then we'll jump straight into a presentation on the work that you've been doing, Ellisha, in West Suffolk College, and actually broader now as well, in terms of there is so much that you're involved in now. So please do introduce yourself to the people that have joined us.
Yes, so hello everyone, good evening. My name is Ellisha Soanes. I am the Quality and Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator at West Suffolk College and part of our college Eastern groups. I'm also a Quality Diversity Consultant as well, and my pronouns are she and her. So thank you for having me here today, Arv.
Thank you, Ellisha, and thank you for your time today, and leading up until now as well. And over to you, Jeff. If you want to do a quick introduction.
Hi everyone, I'm Jeff Greenidge. I'm the Director for Diversity, working with the ETF, Education and Training Foundation, and the Association of Colleges. And I've been sort of working with the sector for a year, just looking at what practitioners are doing, what the sector leaders are doing, and actually what the organisations around that, the enabling organisations, what they're doing to support inclusion and diversity.
Thank you, Jeff. And obviously we'll delve greater into the things that you're involved in for both of you. But starting with you, Ellisha, should we go straight into the presentation?
Yes, please. I just wanted to say before we start the presentation, I'm no way an expert in all areas of quality diversity, so don't get alarmed, people. Don't feel like, oh, I've got to do the same sort of process Ellisha has, but hope you'll be able to take certain things on board and get that, think about in your areas where you work within an education, organisations, and take bits of that and put it into your own organisation. Should we get going, my lovely assistant of?
Yeah.
I'm here to talk to you today about Black history and being inclusive in your environments that you're in as well. One of the things I've recognised for this year, which I was really shocked about, is that I was the first ever FE lecturer or lead to basically do Black history across the whole year. It's never happened before, apparently. So it's really exciting. It's amazing. But obviously, there's areas that we can improve on, and we can all work on this together at the national level. So as I start, I want to start with education is the most powerful weapon which we can use to change the world. I wish I made that quote up, it's a fantastic quote. It was by the amazing Nelson Mandela. And why I feel like this quote is so trivial and so important into our sector, because when we are teachers, lecturers, work in education sector, we wear so many different hats. We're mentors, we work as social workers as well, we're advocates for our learners. So education is so important, and sometimes we're the only sort of support system students have at that time, and they all come up and ask us so many different questions. So it's so important that we understand and educate ourselves as well. And I feel like with education, and quality diversity, it all embeds in. As I'm talking to you all now over the screens, over a year or so ago, I did the same with some health and social care students, because I still work in a lecturing role still. I think it's so important. It was the death of George Floyd, and the students and I had an open conversation about it, and it's a very student-led approach that we took on. And they decided to create some posters, and some of the posters they created and they looked at it was looking at George Floyd, but they came back to me and they said, oh my goodness, Ellisha, this isn't just in America it's happening in the UK and across the world too, racial injustice. So they put together some fantastic posters which you can see, and they looked at it from their own eyes. You'll see they did a lot of more sort of tributes for people as well. We put these on the college website, we put these across the college. These amazing posters that they did. You can see some more fantastic work that they've done. And I just want you to bear in mind as well, the college I work in is very rural, and it's not very diverse. It wasn't very diverse a few years ago. And it just shows all the amazing work that they've done. But some of the students didn't think this was enough, just putting some posters up. So I spoke to them and said, well, what else would you like to do? How else would you like to get your message across? And I'm also a trainer in Black history. So I've trained staff on Black history and why it's important. So one of the things that the students decided to do, that's another amazing picture that they've done. You'll see that the students wanted to talk about it from their own lived experiences, but we had a group of amazing students come in. What they decided to do, should I say, is look at it from their own perceptions and talk about why Black history is important to them. Because it's all well and good me talking about and saying why Black history is important, but coming from a student's perception, it was amazing. So from the work that we were able to do, it went national, this video, and it was a lovely thing that the students were able to put into place. They also, as a question I'm going to ask, will put in the chat. So Arthur, if you can monitor the chat for me, I'm going to ask two questions to everybody, including yourself, Arthur, and Jeff as well. Were you ever taught Black history in school? That's the first question. Yes, no. Second question is, if you were taught Black history, what were you taught? 9 times out of 10, from my own experience as well, if we were taught Black history, it was about civil rights and slavery, and it was always the same sort of people like Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks. Then there are some amazing people in history, but there's so many more people that we can discuss and talk about. So the students want to talk about some more people, and as you can see in the video on the slide, Ruby Bridges is one of them. She was very iconic for the civil rights movement, but somebody that we don't necessarily talk about. So the students presented their own sort of Black history workshops. So they want to talk about some amazing people in history as well, in the public services sector that we don't talk about, and the Windrush generation that came over, and our unforgotten heroes, to name a few. The work that the students were able to do, we then received funding from Place 21 and European Union. And the video that you just saw in the introduction went viral. And from that, we were able to have our own equality and diversity team. You can see from the PowerPoints that there's so many people in Black history, like Althea Gibson, who've made so much supported the system, and people that they wanted to talk about more detail. From the work that we've done, I've now got a group of equality diversity staff ambassadors. So I've got about 7 on my team at the moment, and they work across the groups, and we support staff on training, we support staff on enrichment events, and we support our students. Now we have equality and diversity student ambassadors. And we teach Black history across the year, and we do workshops with all of our curriculum teams on that. One of the things that was really important in the work that we've done is that we wanted to reach out to our local communities and get their support. So when we decided to launch our equality diversity ambassadors and Black history across the year, there was 2 things that we were really excited to do and work on. What you'll see that is we were able to do our own untold heroes, because when we look at people in society in our communities, they're not also represented, and we need to see perceptions from everybody in our society. So we did our own Untold Heroes event. We did some award events as well, where the BBC were involved, and they supported our students, the student ambassadors that put in the work in place. But one of the things that was really amazing from what we achieved is we did our Untold Heroes event. And the Untold Heroes event, we had a fantastic gentleman come in from the Windrush generation called Derek Bobinson Thomas, and he spoke to our students on his journey and being the first RAF sergeant from Suffolk to be a pilot back in 1949, I believe. And it was just a lovely experience for students to hear these conversations, because a lot of them didn't even know about the Windrush. So it was one of the events that we did. And then the other one that we decided to talk about and have a look at our local communities, our Untold Heroes event. And we were really fortunate enough that if any of you've watched a show called BBC Small Axe, we were able to get Alex Whittle and Leroy Logan. They were very big icons in Black history, and they spoke to our students online about this fantastic event. We also had CEOs come in from organisations. We had Richard Branson's mentor come and work with our students. We had modelling agencies, just some fantastic people come and be a part of the journey. So it was just fabulous for them to be a part of this. When I talk about reaching out to our communities as well, it was so important that we work with all our areas of EDI. And one of those was the Black Panther exhibition. So some of you may not be Black Panther fanatics like myself, Marvel fans. So the museums and myself as a museum creator were able to get the costumes from LA over to the UK, and around the exhibition of the costume pieces, it was all based on Black history. So we invited our students in, we invited primary schools to come in, we invited other community groups to come and tour this. And it didn't only just give our students, an eye-opening support on Black history, but the other children, other community members as well. And what was so important as well, that they've been able to now upskill themselves. We also worked with a Nigerian princess as well, who's located in Suffolk, and did a lot of media with this on the events. So these are some of the events that we had been able to do and work on since we've been able to embed Black history across the year. One of the things that we're really excited about at the college, I think we have over 70 student equality diversity ambassadors. Now, this is not just in Black history and looking at race. We have them under all our 9 protected characteristics. And one of the things that we're doing tomorrow, we're doing our first ever trans awareness talk. So we do enrichment events across the year with the student support. They are now upskilling themselves. So when they go off into the big world, they then have these sort of EDI areas that they can support and hopefully go into as well in the future, and be allies as well, because it's so important. So that's just a little bit about Learning College experience. I will hopefully discuss with you and Arv and Jeff as well about the impact it's had and some sort of tips for the future and what you can do. But there's a quote I love to say, and it's about diversity. It's about being invited to the party, and inclusion is getting up and being part of the dance. So it's just about how we can get everybody to be part of the dance and joining it. Thank you very much, Arv, for that. And I will let you take the lead again.
Thank you, Ellisha. A real whistle-stop tour of an immense amount of work. And I think I'm just going to just give you a little bit of feedback from the questions, if that's okay. Hannah's asked a question: how many people are involved in organising events of that sort?
Wow. In the beginning, it was just me, myself and I. So just one person just a lot of passion behind it. When you start doing this work and you're passionate on it and you start having your own steer groups, it becomes really easy to funnel it down, you know. So about four members of staff. So before it was just myself and I. And then for the events that we've done recently back in June, about 4 members of staff. But it's about everybody taking ownership of it as well. So going to your curriculum team, that's what we've done, and said we're hosting this event. Students need work experience in these areas, and the students jumped at the chance at it as well. And one of the things from the events that we did, and I'm really proud of, that some of our students got hired and have been given jobs working with the CEOs and speaking. It's about nepotism and networking, talking to people from different diverse backgrounds. So I'm really glad that weren't just an event. It was about what happens after this.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think people have commented. Annie said, "What a brilliant network you have." And I saw the images from the exhibition as well, and I thought it was a real good springboard in terms of creating conversations. I think, which then I think got more people involved by the looks of it. So I think what we'll do is, if that's okay, first of all, you asked a question at the beginning in terms of what was people's experience about being taught Black history when they're at school. And I know just by some of the people, it's a range of ages there, and everybody had said no. they hadn't had any, I suppose, explicit or even embedded Black history taught, especially what we get to hear about these days, more so. So, I mean, was that a similar kind of experience that you'd had with the colleagues and people that you were connecting with?
Yes, I mean, I've done this programme now, gosh, thousands of students and staff members, and I've always asked the same question when I start the sessions. I always say, were you ever taught Black history in school? And they always say, might say yes or no, and if they do, it's very, 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 very small amounts will say, yes, we have, but it was slavery and civil rights. And I always say to people, okay, now think about it from a perception of it. And I said, I remember from my own sort of experiences being taught, you know, Black History for that month. And a lot of students, you've got to think about and observe and reflect, why did some students not go, oh, you know, Black History Month again? Especially students that are from diverse backgrounds. And it's because it's usually the same thing. And it makes you think, you know, so was my, you know, people that look like me, my perception, so all they did was be a slave, you know, they were captured, stolen, you know, slavery. And then we just fought for our rights. What is that? Was that what happened? Where are the inventors? Where are the icons? You know, so we need to think about that as well. How we uplift people and think about it as well from another perception. When other people look, go, oh, is that? Oh, okay, that's it. And when I do these sort of workshops with our students, they are so overwhelmed and shocked, but a good shock at how much work has happened and taken place. So it's really lovely to see.
Yeah, I think one of the students in the video said, you know, weren't we invented then? You know, did we not exist before that time? Did we not do anything else? So I mean, that's a really, really good point. What I'd like to do is just bring Jeff onto the E stage.
Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on something, you know, Ellisha said about what's in the chat there about Black history. I suppose I was privileged in some sense, because when I was in school, it was at the same time as Roots was on television. And like you say, Ellisha, you know, I had this impression that all Black people were slaves. And then, you know, so what have you got to be proud about? But interestingly, I studied Latin. And in my Latin classroom, we learnt that the guy who ran Britain at that time was a Black guy. He's an emperor, and he was Black, Scipio Africanus. And that, you know, lots of emperors were Black. And if you were Roman, no one really cared whether you were Black, you were Asian, or you were white. As long as you were Roman, you were Roman. And anyone who was Roman could get to a particular point in time. And you know what? I also learned that a lot of the white people in England were actually the slaves of the Black people. So it just really sort of gave me a different perception of what I could be. And that's about having, I suppose in a sense, having real models and not necessarily role models, because these emperors, these were real people. So I had a slightly different perception to the one that I was being fed at TV on with Roots. And one thing interesting, like what you're doing here, Ellisha, is that you're providing those students within West Suffolk with real models, you know, Derek, people who they can see in the streets, people who they recognize. And so this idea of Black history being history, well, no, it's actually present. It's actually what's happening now. And it's not just for Black students. It's, in fact, this history is our history because it's here now. So I think what is happening there and what's happening in other colleges where they're taking this approach is that they're creating classrooms where all students feel as though they can thrive. They're using real models, real people from history, from past history and from recent history. But what this approach is doing, it's increasing understanding of difference, and it's also helping people to value and respect that difference. So it's a very, very powerful tool, this co-creation that I see taking place with yourselves and, you know, within other organizations. And I think that's one of the big sort of pluses that I've found this year for myself personally, that people have taken that on board, that this approach to that inclusive curriculum that reflects diverse experiences and diverse perspectives is something which is beginning, it's fledgling. And I think we can do a lot more, we can build on this. And like you say, Ellisha, it's not a template that you're offering, but it's a set of questions that we're posing. You know, is it possible to create an inclusive curriculum within, I don't know, within Bradford, within Birmingham, within Bermondsey, which looks at the real models, the real people who have shaped Bermondsey, who've shaped Bradford, who've shaped Birmingham, and then that, in a sense, engages students. We're moving from tolerance to a place of inclusion, and I think that's the big shift that is taking place within further education. So I just want to say that's what your story stirs up in my mind, that idea that we're shifting from a place of tolerance to a place of inclusion. A lot more work to be done, but we've got some models and some examples of practice on which we can build.
Definitely. Yeah. It was a very, it was a very student-led approach as well. So I spoke to my students and they were helped with the curriculum. So I said, if we could do this all back, rewind time, if you would taught Black history again, who would you like to know about? What would you like to be taught? Ancient Kemet came up, our untold heroes, the Windrush generation. And they wanted to really look at it. And this is why I think it's so important it has to come from the students. We wanted to look at it obviously for a national level, but we wanted to look at it in our own communities as well, because it makes it real and it looks at all the people that have done things. So having somebody that you can kind of see and they're here today as well and go, they were the first ever, Black pilot, or they were the first ever Black businessman in this area. It just tells some fantastic stories, and then they can be able to grasp it and say, well, if they can do it 60, 70, plus years ago, what's stopping me? Why can't I do it? So it's very important. And like Jeff was saying, everyone's going to take on their own approach. Everyone's going to be able to take little pieces of this and be able to do it in their own areas.
And what I also see there is a subtle shift from what used to happen, where we were taught things, to we're going from teaching in a sense to learning. So these students, they're learning as they're working and they're experiencing things. So no one's teaching them about, Derek the pilot. They're learning about Derek the pilot and they're experiencing that. And that's really quite important. But that will stay with them. That sticks. Whereas some things you're taught never stick, or some do, some don't. When you learn something, you experience it. That's a much more stickable. Is stickable a word? That sticks much more than if you were taught it by someone. So I think it's a cracking approach, Ellisha. I really like what's been done there. And I like that idea of that co-creation, because it does stick with the learners.
Yeah, like I always say as well, it's in some areas that and it's okay to say I have no idea about Black history, or certain areas LGBTQI+, it can go on disability, but your students might have so much vast knowledge. Why don't you, sometimes I take a seat and they teach me something new and I go, brilliant, how can we now add this and share it with our peers, or share it with our staff? So that's another approach that you can take on as well if you haven't got that much knowledge or understanding. Students will, the communities will that you work with. When I reached out to a lot of communities, the museums were fantastic, organisations, they all jumped at the chance and said, yes, we'd love to help and be a part of it, which is just fantastic. And I think we just need to get rid of those perceptions and stigmas that people from different diverse communities or wherever are not willing to support and help, or, so I think we need to kind of change the approach on that to a little bit when we work in sectors.
I was going to say, in terms of the sustainability angle of this, and I know that we've talked about, I know that myself and Jeff have talked about this in terms of when you take Ellisha out of the equation to make sure that that work that continues. What sort of things have you done to embed that practice so that it's not reliant on one person driving that work forward, especially in the curriculum area? Because I think sometimes there's that tendency, isn't there, that can happen. The work is good, but then that person leaves. So what sort of work have you done on that aspect?
So it has to be, like you said, I can't be I can't have a magic wand and help. I would wish I could and help everybody, thousands of people. So what we've done, we've got our governors to make sure that they have an understanding and take the impact. From our CEO, the governors, they will understand how important it is, because if the people from the top don't, it's not going to get fed down to everybody from the staff, the teachers, to pastoral support, our assistants, to our students. So it's really important. One of the things I was really glad that we've done, Jeff came and did some training with our staff on equality, diversity, inclusion, and why it's important. More of, I'm sure Jeff will take the lead on this, but really reflective practices to think, what have you done? What can we do more of? And what are we going to do for the future to make it sustainable? So we've got it from the governor's perception, what they're going to do, their ethos, the CEO, what they're going to do, so they feed it down to their teams. But I've also been able to do some training. So I've trained a lot of our staff across the college groups, the senior management teams, our lecturing staff as well, and our pastoral support and our assistants, because everybody needs to be a part of this. It's not just a thing for just lecturers to take on board. So I've got a really strong understanding that everyone needs to be part of the culture of this. So I'm training our new staff members. I do a lot some EDI training, unconscious bias training. We recently had some training on equality and diversity trainer, which I think is a fantastic element to use, because once you have that element, you can then put it through to everything that you're doing. So then you can take that and work with your students on it, and the students can be trained, and then vice versa. So it's a really nice little ripple effect that's going on. When the work that comes to Black history as well, is making sure everybody's involved within it. I'm really fortunate that we've now expanded our equality and diversity team. So then the lecturers are now taking things on board, and they're using them, and they're working on the sharing good practices, and everyone's doing it. So yeah, it's about having that grassroots effect as well. So the students are doing it, from the CEO, the governors, and I think that's such an important approach to take to make it sustainable for the future.
Has it all been open doors and open ears to you?
I mean, I think in every sort of situation, you're going to get people humming and hawing and going, oh, I'm not sure. And it's probably one of the first to be able to do it. But, you have to keep on going, and you have to keep on being resilient and pursuing. And I'm really fortunate that we've got a fantastic CEO and I had a fantastic management team that said, brilliant. I remember, gosh, it must be nearly a year ago when this just started, and I wanted to do my first equality diversity event for my students to thank them and congratulate them and get an award ceremony. Jeff came to it. Some amazing people, icons, came to the event online, and that was the beginning. And when I got lots of support from senior teams, they came to it as well. It just really shows that it has to be a tribe, a culture of the college working together and cheering each other on when we're doing things that are working really well.
And
Jeff, jump in there.
No, I was going to say, bring you in,
because I know Ellisha started by talking about dancing, and I think that's a really good analogy, because what you see happening across the sector is that you have a number of people who are changing the game. They begin to dance, and they'll dance on their own. They may look a bit foolish, and we may mock them and think this is the daft thing to do. But then what happens, get one or two people, one person normally comes on board and is a bit curious about what's going on, and they join. The trick is getting someone in a senior position to be that first follower. And that's what you did there in West Suffolk College. You got a senior person to be a first follower. So that first follower then dances with you and you begin to have that dance together. By doing that together, you're raising awareness that something is happening. The point then of the celebrating the success was really good, because then that encourages other people to come on board. You get the third follower and so on, and they come on board. So what you've done, slowly, you've begun a bit of a movement within the college. And you're absolutely right. At a certain point in time, people begin to get a bit nervous about this. That's when the governors need to be really involved. Well, this dance is taking place. Do you want to be involved in it? It's good. It's having success. And that's what we did, that training session with the governors and the senior leaders. And they fully bought into it. And then once they've bought into it and it's part of the college curriculum plan, that's how it's sustainable, it's because it's well embedded now within the DNA. But it takes the first person to get up and dance, and then to drag in those key leaders who will make it work or stop it. And you did that with your principal, you did it with your senior management, and I saw that, and it really worked well. It sounds a bit daft, the analogy, but it works, and it's working in other areas as well, as we can see across the sector.
I always say as well, you have to get uncomfortable to get comfortable. And that's the only way you're going to be able to get, and that is so important. That's why I always say education is the most powerful weapon which we can use to change the world. And I stick to that. And that's sort of my little slogan that I use all the time. It's just because it's so important. So we will use, the wrong language sometimes. And I think a lot of staff do get hesitant, but that's okay. Correct yourself, apologise, and learn from it and move on. That's a part of reflection, because it's not about us. It's about our students and making sure they get the best experiences when they are in FE sector. And that's a part of our role, we're meant to support them with that. So it's about, we're always learning, we're always doing new things, everything's updating. So it's about being a part of that, but it's also recognising under the Quality Act 2010 and Ofsted as well, that equality and diversity is a massive big piece of that. And we should be weaving things through, regardless of EDI, enrichment events, working with speakers throughout their time at college.
What I was going to say was, in terms of just broadening the work, when you had the exhibition last year, and you said that everybody's invited in terms of, you had primary schools, you had schools, and all the rest of it. How has your work impacted the schools that surround the college that you're in terms of that drip feeding, that nudging of good practice and good behaviours? What have you seen on that side, and what work are you doing on that aspect?
It's been amazing, because the floodgates have now opened, and it started from, I call it like a little bit of the Untold Heroes, was more like a TED talk. And it was like everybody had their own sort of conversations, and you could watch it back. It was really lovely. So we sent it out to the public as well, so they could watch it back. And a lot of schools did in the area. So now they've been asked to work with schools, locally in our area. And it's really nice, because it's nice to connect the dots as well. So in the work that's been able to, developed over time, everybody else is starting to jump on board, like Jeff said, everyone else is being part of the dance. And also the Black Panther exhibition, it was only going to be on for a short period of time. I've been able to now keep it on and going. It's going to be going on tours across sort of Suffolk and Norfolk area, and hopefully we'll be able to take it nationally. And every area, for example, when it goes to a certain area in Suffolk, the schools will be involved, and they'll be putting things together on Black history. They'll be part of doing workshops. We're getting local communities together. So it's a really nice experience. We're not excluding everybody, we're including everyone. We're saying, come and bring your part involved. How would you like to be involved? People might say, actually, I haven't got any experience in Black history as a nursery, a nursery teacher, or somebody that works in the sector, or they work in the job centre, for example, the prison services, but I really want to learn. And they come to these events where we've got the community being involved, we've got our students being in workshops, and you can see how it all links together. So it's fantastic for everybody to get that support and experience.
Yeah, and I think that's that ripple effect that you talked about before, in terms of not just inside the college and the college group, but also then beyond that as well. Because a lot of those people are going to engage with you in different ways moving forward as well. So whether they come to you as an institution to learn in, or work in, or be partners, industry partners, or whatever that might be. And I think that's where that work starts becoming more sustainable in your local area, especially. And I think I said to you when we first met, that tour needs to come to Milton Keynes when you get that off the ground. There's a couple of questions that have come through, one to you specifically, and then one to both yourself and Jeff. First of all, Annie's asked, so what's your background and how did you develop your career in this way?
Okay, so my background, I always, because I'm a quality diversity, coordinator now, and lead, I always think it's important to keep myself into teaching. So I always try to give myself a few hours of teaching across the week. So I have sort of I don't know what the term is anymore, but I'm on the ground still. And I think that's so important. So you can hear from the students' perception, the lecturers' perception, pastoral support perception. So I teach health and social care in early years, and my background before this was I worked with in sort of the PRU sector, prison services, and before that I was a manager for learning support. So I've always worked with people from different amazing diverse backgrounds. So that was very normal for me, and I was brought up in a diverse area. So that was always normal to be working with amazing different people. That was just part of culture and understanding. So going to a very rural area, I really wanted to embrace that and bring things into that to say, look, just because you're in a little village now, you know, that's fine, but you're going to go into a big different world, you'll meet different people, and there's so many fantastic cultures and people you're going to meet along the way that you should be able to experience and just, you know, to understand and take things from those cultures or different, you know, different people's perceptions as well. So yeah, so I sort of started off in the health and social care world and had children, and it wasn't sort of sustainable doing long hours anymore. So I went into a friend said to me one day, you know, you'd be amazing being a lecturer. You train staff anyway on, you know, quality diversity. It was part of my role. So yeah, and I ended up going into lecturing, and then it sort of pole vaulted, and I've been an EDI lead, and I'm also a community creator, and I work with museums, making sure that they embed Black history and other cultural history across different sort of organisations.
And you mentioned the other part of the work that you do as well, which obviously your consultancy work as well, which obviously is now taking your work beyond wherever that might lead as well.
Yeah, so I've been supporting some colleges nationally, and also with working with councils too, because there's such a big need for this work to embed and to support people further. And I also with the arts sort of academy and theatres as well, because I remember going to TV studios in the last few months, and I was looking around and I'm thinking, well, there's not a lot of diversity or women in productions, for example, in these industries, and there's not a lot of people behind the screens and in front of these screens as well, or have the ability to be museum creators. And I like to ask a lot of questions and find out from our learners, from students, from young people, to find out why is that. And it's because they don't see themselves in those roles, or they're not being empowered enough. So they're the sort of conversations we need to have, and I support of getting people to do a lot of reflective practice and put some strategies and strategies in place to support them further.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to jump to a question from Maxine. Jeff, can I come to you first on this? I think you've seen the question. What do you, and we get this question quite a lot, no matter what session we're running and whatever we're talking about, what do you do when staff say that they don't have time for diversity and that it is extra and they've got too much to do? That whole thing about being time poor, resource poor and everything poor when you're in education, that putting something else into the mix, you simply don't have the time or the energy to be able to do that as well. Jeff, can I just come to you just from a broader point of view in terms of, obviously you connect with a lot of colleges in lots of different settings and locations across England, in terms of what would you say to staff that have that mindset?
It is about mindset, isn't it? It's about mindset, and my background is one of coaching. So my initial thought is to work with that person to coach them into much more of a growth mindset, as opposed to a problem-solving mindset. You know, where you're looking to grow and expand your own sort of knowledge and skills. That's about engaging people and supporting people. That's my initial sort of thought process. Then you look at the context around you. If everyone is beginning to get up and dance, then you might find yourself being excluded if you don't get up and dance. So there's a support there, and at some point it almost becomes a threat. If you don't get involved in this, you're going to be left out. And I suppose the third area is that once it's embedded within the college's plans, curriculum plans and staff plans, then it's part of your job. So, and there may be things that we don't necessarily like to do, but it's part of your job. And if it's part of your job, then it's up to the organization to provide time for you to do those things. So I think there's it's like a continuum, isn't there? It's the support, it's the engagement, it's the invitation to join the party, and the threat, therefore, of not joining the party, what will happen to you there. But then ultimately, it's part of your contractual arrangement with the organization to deliver that inclusive curriculum and that's just what we do.
And I think it's also up to the management team as well, like Jeff was saying, to make sure it's part of people's roles. So if you're a lecturer, for example, and we've put into schemes of work, how have you embedded equality and diversity? So in every sort of session you do, you should be able to see the drip line. What have you done this session on equality diversity? And it might be being part of some steer groups, getting some steer groups together and talk about sharing good practices. So one of the things I do just on a regular basis, if I'm in a classroom, I've written something on the board, it could be how do we get more women together in, construction, get students to think about it, for example, screenshot it, pop it on Teams, for example, or put it on a Padlet. There's so many different types of resources you can use for other staff to be able to use that. And go, that's a good idea. I'm going to try that with my students next time. Or let's look at some black icons in healthcare or anything in industry. Screenshot. That could be just a topic of conversation on the board. So it doesn't have to be really big things. I think a lot of people get overwhelmed and go, oh my goodness. It's just start and doing the small little ripple effects, and you don't even know that you're doing it. You might even want to put your pronouns on the board, for example. What does that mean, miss? Whoever. And having those and then starting those topics into conversations. It's something really small like that. And that could be just doing the work, and once you start doing the work, it goes on and on.
Yeah, something just cropped into my mind there. I think we're talking about Black history here, but this is, the whole thrust is about inclusion, I think, across the sector. And we mustn't forget the intersectionality of things. You can be Black and be a woman, you can be Black and be gay, you can be Black and be transgender. So it's about having that classroom, again, where all students feel as though they can thrive. And it's about creating that environment where an individual's history is reflected within what they see, not just on TV and adverts and so on, or in the books, but in the conversation that's taking place within that classroom about real people, what real people are doing. Now, what we see on television nowadays, since George Floyd's murder, you see in every advert there's a Black person. In every single advert you see on TV. Now, that's not real. I know what they're trying to do there, but it's not real. And youngsters, students will understand the reality of life, and they understand real people. And they know that there are Black footballers who are gay, there are Black rugby players who are gay, and those are the people that they recognize and they understand and they see. So I think there's something about just keeping it real, really, and helping those students to create that curriculum which they can recognise as being something that they can own locally and nationally as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Conscious of the time, but I want to ask one final question, which I think is a good thing that we're being asked this question more and more, rather than just what work do we need to do, is actually what does success and what does good look like in this work? So from your point of view, Ellisha, you do the work, you get the work embedded within a curriculum, or whether it's creating that drive and enthusiasm within the student base or the workforce. But what does good and what does success look like if you were to measure it? So that how would you recognise that?
See, me thinking from a corporate head and me thinking it from a sort of lecturer myself person. It's about the students for me. It's about what impact it's having on our students. It's about what they're getting from it, getting quotes from it. So we have a equality diversity newsletter we put out. I was very overwhelmed after I took these students to the Black Panther exhibition because I decided to take purposely lower level students. I took foundation level students, took level 1 students, level 2 sort of base students who don't get these opportunities as much as our higher learners or degree students to go out on the field and get these sort of experiences. And it was just lovely to get those quotes from students saying, I've never had these opportunities before, thank you. I'm really thinking about going to these sort of areas now because of what you've offered out. So it's about empowering. So it's about capturing those thoughts and getting them on paper and saying, well, would you like to write a story about what you've done, a little blog? And it's about then getting them from writing blogs, become museum curators. One of the stories I love to tell, one of the students that you saw in the video, she was a previous health and social care student, Esther. She wasn't very confident. She had not the best time, experiencing racism, and the work that we've done it was very empowering, and I hope the work she's able to do. She said, well, I'm a really good singer, Ellisha. So she's able to utilise the skills that she had working with myself and then became a singer, and now she's gone off nationally and it's made a career for herself from it. So it's about what is the impact it's having on our learners. Yes, it's amazing what's happening across the college, our staff, but what is that doing to help our students? Because they're going to grow up, they're going to go into job roles, they're going to be allies, and it's just looking at it going further, because there's obviously a lot of sort of support that's still needed to be inclusive in our society, so in healthcare, for example, in lots of fields. So it's about they've been able to do the work at a certain level, and they can take that on board and do the work further afield. And I think that's so important when we look at the impact. What's it having on our students? How can we capture that? Podcasts, newsletters, doing audits on it if you want to see it from a corporate sort of head. But for me, it's how is that affecting our students in a positive way?
So is part of the work also getting people to look at evidence in a different way as well? So rather than just looking at that, like you said, the corporate head, the numbers, all that, the crunching, that side of it, it's actually looking at the qualitative side of it in terms of the impact, the case studies, all of those things. What are people actually saying and feeling about their experience having been to West Suffolk College? Is that the thing that people are having to look at and think about how they value that level of evidence?
Definitely, and we've been looking at success stories too. So I work with Suffolk One, sixth form, and they haven't got a diverse amount of students, but it's about capturing the work that we're doing and feeding that across to all our colleges. So now we're creating a book on the students that have been here, done that, and what they're doing now. So it's really lovely to have it's like a book of success, and I think it's really nice to see that and go, look, actually the work that we've done on Black History, you can see that and how that's working for our students and having these programs together. So I really challenge and say, look at the impact. Okay, it's great that we have figures and numbers and audits, but let's look and see how we can capture that information, do podcasts with students, let's do newsletters, let's get those quotations and put them up on our college walls, for example. We'll have them as our student ambassadors, because that would be really lovely for them as well, especially if from different, you don't have to be from diverse backgrounds, but it'd be nice for them to say, I've got a lot of students that are sort of our race ambassadors and they're white, and I said it doesn't matter what colour you are, it doesn't matter what creed, what your beliefs are, it's about everybody working together, and I absolutely love that. So it's like taking those success stories and showing them and spreading it.
Absolutely. Jeff, what about from your point of view? What would success look like? What does good look like? Because I know that we've all had these conversations behind the scenes.
Yeah, I don't differ at all from what Ellisha is saying there. I think it's when it becomes not Black history or not LGBTQ plus history, but it becomes our history when we all take part of it. And the story I tell about West Suffolk College is a taxi ride I had going from a hotel to the college. It was only a 10-minute taxi drive, but it was really quite emotional. Because the taxi driver, a white guy with a load of tattoos, at one point he said, began talking about Black people being in prison and stuff. Oh, good grief, where's this going now? Then he mentioned the fact that he was in the National Front. I thought, oh, good grief, how do I get out of this taxi? But we had a little conversation, and this guy's a lovely guy, and we talked about what his life was like and why he chose to go down a particular road of joining the National Front. Is because he felt excluded from that particular classroom. Then we talked about what inclusion could have looked like if he had been included. And we probably would have had a very similar background, me and Colin. But then what he said was, I want to go into the college and talk to the students about what it's like being excluded, what happens when you're excluded, and what it's like when you are included, and how this Colin is 63, same age as me, and he'd been in prison, he'd done some bad things, but he wanted to give back to the college. So I think when we get to the point where Colin wants to share his history with young people, and they share their history, and that's happened in West Suffolk College. True story, happened a few weeks ago. Then I think that to me is a step towards success. But we can't be complacent, because if we take our foot off the pedal, then things go backwards very fast. So success is when we share the history. And it's not Black history, but it's our history.
Almost a perfect place to finish. What I'm going to ask you to do just as I wrap up is just think about some golden nuggets, or a golden nugget that you want to give the people that watch this in terms of any advice in terms of where they should perhaps start, or how they can get the enthusiasm within their organisations to actually do this work. Any advice that you can give? I'm going to give you a couple of minutes just to think about that as I just intro the next week's session to give you time to think. So next week we've got Jaspal Halliwell from Westminster Adult Education Service, and he'll be looking at the work that they've been doing in not just narrowing the gap and closing the gap, but also the work they're now doing, which is preventing the gap. So how they're using student data in terms of the gaps within achievement to actually drive some of the work that they're doing on in informing their strategies in inclusive work within curriculum, as well as their development of staff within Westminster Adult Education. And that's at 5 o'clock next Wednesday, and I'll be sending you out a link for that, as I've done with the previous ones. But now just going back to, who should we go to first? Jeff, golden nugget that you'd want to pass on.
I think we need to talk to each other a bit more. You know, Elisha's got some cracking examples of what she's done. Not a template, as she admits, but why don't we talk and share things? I know other colleges are doing something similar, or they're starting down the road. Why wouldn't we network? Why wouldn't we share what we're doing? Why wouldn't we have these discussions? And what you're doing out there with FE Voices is a great sort of forum. You know, the Education and Training Foundation have also got tools that are used. You know, we've had people who have been coached to become those game changers. Let's talk to people at ETF and the AoC. Let's share our examples with each other and create those networks, because that's through that I think things will grow.
Absolutely. I think the momentum has definitely been growing over the last year or so, more noticeably. So I think that you're absolutely right. Sharing and collaborating, nudging each other's behaviours as well, I think as well. So the more we share, the more we want to do more of the right things. I think that's definitely a way forward. Final word with you, Ellisha.
I've just got to voice what Jeff said. It's so important to network, support, start, if you haven't already, start your own steer groups in your own colleges, you know, and start working together more. And I'd also say invite your local communities in. Ask them to put on some enrichment events. It could be for one day, for example, pop-up sort of little event, and start that ripple effect. Because once you do one thing, it'll be so easy to continue the work that you're doing in the sector. So it's so important. And the last thing I think it really helped the support with this, and it's about talking to people, talk to myself, talk to Arv, talk to Jeff. You know, we're not on a pedestal. We are nice. We'll talk to you about these things and support you. It's inclusive language as well. That's the main step. I think you need to understand the language that we use to our learners and to our staff members before you take those steps to go forward. So I think that's the first thing we need to look at. And I know, Arv, you've created an amazing inclusive language guide that staff can use. And that's just my final point. Just network, and just talk to one another, because the more we talk, the more we get things done.
Thank you. And I think a perfect way to finish. I want to thank you, Jeff, for your time and for joining us almost at the last minute. We grabbed you and pulled you in. So thank you, Jeff, for your time. And thank you, Ellisha, again, as always inspiring us to do more and better. So I look forward to what comes next. Actually, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Yes, see you tomorrow.
And I just want to thank everybody that's joined the session and that are watching it. As Jeff and Ellisha said, and I've said all the way through, our strength comes from bringing our voices together. And the more those voices come together, the more the work is shared and it becomes easier as we move forward. So working with your local colleges, your local schools, your communities that you sit within, and further afield as well. It's good to talk, apparently. That's me signing off for another session of FE Voices, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.